All right. Cherie, I think we are live on Facebook.
Awesome.
I know. Awesome. So hello to all of you out there in Facebook land. For those of you who don't know me, although I know many of you do, my name is Christy Keating, and I am the founder of the Heartful Parent Collective, which Savvy Parents Safe Kids is a very important piece of. And today I'm so excited to have my friend and colleague, Cherie Benjoseph here of the KidSafe Foundation, which is based in Florida. And Cherie and I got the idea to do some of these Facebook Live events. When was that, Cherie? Last fall?
Like September, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we really thought, look, there's information that we both have. There's information that parents want. And so for 2022, our two organizations are collaborating. We're going to go live on Facebook about every other month, talking about some issues that are important for parents to be aware of in the realm of safety and child sexual abuse prevention. So, I'll start there. And, those of you who know me know that I do presentations on child sexual abuse prevention, online safety, talking to tweens and teens about consent, what you need to know as a middle school parent in terms of safety, all sorts of different safety presentations that I give all over the country. Many of them, of course, in our local area, because, in the Seattle area, which is where I'm based. And I feel so privileged to be able to do this work and to draw on my previous background as a prosecuting attorney, where my focus was prosecuting sex offenders and sexually violent predators. And I just feel so lucky to be able to help parents prevent these things before they happen, rather than dealing with them after the fact. And, once I took over and was running Savvy Parents Safe Kids, I had the great privilege of being able to join the National Coalition for the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse, which is a phenomenal collaboration and coalition of people doing this work all over the country in big ways and in small ways. I think I'm in the smaller category, but we also have the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Monique Burr Foundation, and all sorts of really big, amazing people doing this work. And I had the great privilege to meet Cherie through that coalition. So Cherie, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to everyone and the work that you are doing, which is so, so important, but you're in the opposite corner of the country from me. So
literally. One day we will get together and we'll actually do this live together.
Yes.
It'll be wonderful. We'll meet in the middle. So hi, everybody. It's great to be on live. I hope that you're out there and getting some of this information from us. We're so excited to be here and doing this together for the year. So I'm from the KidSafe Foundation, one of the co-founders, and had a similar background to Christy in that I was a social worker. She was a JD, but I worked on the other side where I was working with kids who had already been sexually abused and with families who were in crisis. And I did that for a while. And then I focused on school social work. And I really was moved by the children and families I was working with, specifically a particular child who disclosed to me when she was in about 7th grade. And she came forward and told us that her stepfather was sexually abusing her. And she was by no means, I was very, very young at the time and new to the field, but by no means was she the first case of abuse. But what was different for me in this situation was that she came forward to save her little sister, who she now understood was going to be abused by the same man. And that spun me on my head. And I went from being a reactive school social worker, putting out fires all day, to wanting to be more proactive and get this safety information out to all children, but also their parents, the people who work with them. And that's how KidSafe Foundation was sort of born in my head almost 30 years ago now. And since then, we have founded into a nonprofit in 2009, and we have educated over 50,000 children and 30,000 parents over the years and educators. So our goal is to bring this primary prevention education to everybody, because everybody needs it. And we do similar things to what Christy does. We provide education at schools, to parents, to teachers, and we have a lot of online trainings that are available. And we also have our brand new curriculum that at some point during our time together, we'll talk about. And that's for teachers to utilize to teach children personal safety across our nation.
Yeah. I am so excited when you and I started talking, and I think the way that we met was we were in a big national meeting and we were put into a breakout room and had the chance to get to know one another just a little bit, and was so excited to hear about the work that you're doing. And I mean, those are huge numbers of kids and parents that are being educated. And you know, I always tell the audiences that I speak with that when they attend presentations like the ones that I give and the ones that you give, what the research shows is that 85% of dangerous situations can be avoided. And I think that is so empowering. And so, you know, although what we're going to be talking about today is not a full safety presentation, obviously, it's another piece in the puzzle that parents can use to keep their kids and their teens safer. And it's just such an honor to be collaborating with you to do this. To do these Facebook Lives and to be, you know, putting information in the hands of parents that are hungry for it. Because Cherie, I know you see this, but up here, you know, in the Northwest, and I know you're in the Southeast, you know, the media loves to sell fear, right?
Yeah.
And that those are the headlines that grab people and grab parents, but then they're left with just fear and with no real information with what to do.
That is such an important point, because if we're watching local news, we're not learning, we're just raising everyone's anxiety, and everyone's anxiety is at a peak level right now. And so that's one of the messages that both of us send to the people we work with is, we teach from a place of empowerment, not fear.
Yeah.
You know, yes, we're talking about tough subjects for sure, but it doesn't have to be scary. It's scary because we know too much information about what can happen to our children. But from a child point of view, it doesn't need to be scary. And
Right.
we need to talk about, and that's part of what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about, well, how do I even get there? How do I talk about some of these things without scaring myself and without scaring my children?
Right. Because, you know, well, first of all, of course, it's not any fun for kids to walk around afraid of the world and afraid of everyone that they're going to be interacting with. And, you know, I always say, like, we don't want them to be afraid, because we want them to be able to ask for help when they need it. And we want them to have tools. And parents need those tools just as much, if not more, right? Because I'm a big believer that it is, although we want to arm our kids with tools and information and empower them, when it comes to the end of the day, it really is the responsibility of us as safe adults and parents and educators to keep our children safe, you know, to the extent that we possibly can.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And the key to that is, if we're going to be educating children, which we are, the adults need to know how to respond when a child comes to them. So it's imperative that parents and teachers and other professionals learn this stuff.
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. So to kind of start diving into what we're going to talk about this month, and as I think I mentioned, we're going to go live about every other month in 2022 with a different topic for everyone. But this month just happens to be, it's a mouthful.
I'll say it for you.
You say it.
January is National Trafficking Awareness Month.
Yeah.
It could be human trafficking, it could be child trafficking. We're going to focus on child trafficking, but it's really to raise awareness about the concept of trafficking.
Yeah, which can come in the form of labor, and then it can come in the form of sex trafficking. And that's really what you and I focus our work on. So to kind of kick this off, Cherie, can you just start by kind of explaining to everyone that's watching, like, what do we mean by child sex trafficking? What is that?
Yeah. So the first thing that our mind goes to is overseas. And we think, oh, trafficking, sex trafficking, child trafficking, that happens overseas in other people's countries. That is not a United States issue.
Right. So, and we've seen these movies like Taken that with either Liam Neeson, I might be dating myself. It's an older movie, but yes. I mean, if you see that, that raises fear and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And I'm not saying that there aren't cases and situations that are like that. There are, but that's the rarity. And the reality is that people are being trafficked right here in the United States. So first thing, we have to wrap our heads around that, accept it as a fact, everybody. And then we can start being more proactive. Okay, what do I need to do to prevent that happening in my family, in my community? So just to give you a little understanding of why it's so important for us to understand some stats, nothing boring, I promise. 1 out of 4 girls and 1 out of 13 boys will be sexually abused, not trafficked, sexually abused by the age of 18. 70 to 90% of the children who end up being trafficked already had a history of child sexual abuse. Okay, that's a high risk category. And Florida, California, and Texas are the 3rd largest states in our country for human trafficking. One of the reasons why we are so hell bent on making a difference in moving the needle on this issue. And another important fact is that both girls and boys get trafficked.
Yeah.
We still tend to believe, oh, I have to keep my daughter safe. And I really want to open up people's minds. No, we have to keep our children safe, boys and girls.
Yes. And I just want to say, I'm so happy that you're saying that because I participate in and I'm in a number of different sort of parent related forums. And so often I see parents say something like, well, I need, if they're talking about childcare, for example, well, I need to make sure that my daughter is safe. And I always pipe in and say, hey, if you have a son, like you need to make sure that he is safe as well. And I suspect, child sexual abuse is one of the most underreported crimes out there as it is. And so while what we know is that it's 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys, right? Yes. It's probably much higher than that. And I think boys are historically, statistically, culturally less likely to report.
Yes.
And so there's probably far more boys being abused than we are even remotely aware of.
And I'm so glad you brought it up because when you think about the larger cases that we hear about, the Boy Scouts, the church, those are huge cases that are only pretty much boys being abused. And then we say, oh, but it's more girls. No. Yeah. And that's like systemic abuse, which is even more complicated.
It is. And I'll tell you, in my time as a prosecutor, working on sex crimes cases, I definitely had cases with both male and female victims. And so it really, it's real, it's not made up. So it's just important to recognize that. And again, if child sexual abuse is happening to boys and girls, then human sex trafficking is happening to boys and girls. So I didn't mean to cut you off with your statistics, Cherie, but I just thought that was a highlight.
No, that's where I was heading. No, it's perfect. It's perfect. And a lot of the kids that get sex trafficked are, they might be runaways, they might be in the foster care situation, but we need to make sure that parents understand that it can happen to any family, anywhere. It can happen at the local mall. It can happen at your child's school where they're befriended by another student who is actually a front, who is recruiting for a trafficker. And these things, and it also can happen, of course, online, where a younger child, and now our children are online even more than they ever were, and at a younger age, they're vulnerable to being befriended online by someone and either being sexually abused or we call it sextortion, where they end up accidentally not really understanding what they were getting themselves into, providing material to someone online, and then it's a very, very dangerous slippery slope from there.
Yeah.
So the more we understand about how these things can work, and what our child might, the signs of what a child who is being trafficked might look like, or signs of what a child who is being groomed for trafficking might look like. That will help us be better preventers in our families and in our communities.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And that's where parental awareness and then the willingness to dive into some of these conversations with kids is really important. And I hear a lot of parents say, well, I'll talk to them about that when they're older, right? When they're a teenager, I'll worry about that. And although, trafficking might be more common in tweens and teens than in 4 and 5-year-olds, right? There's still a basis that we need to start setting with those kids. Exactly. And talking with them about personal safety, and giving them some tools around safety. Right. So that those conversations can gradually progress, again, in age appropriate and empowering ways, right? We don't want to re-emphasize that we're not here to scare the pants off our kids, right? We just want them to feel informed and empowered.
And I think it's so important that we understand that tweens and teens are seeing so much online, and they are understanding it in their own mindset by whatever it is they're viewing.
Yeah.
And it's not being explained in a way that we might, as their parent, want them to understand it. So we start young. That's the best case scenario, where you're teaching and empowering with personal safety skills. That's the best. But then build up to the point where you can utilize a commercial that you see on TV or a movie that you watched, and you can start having these conversations at the dinner table, sans technology, because you put your technology away for the dinner meal, right? So you can have these important conversations and see, what did you learn about that? I know they're teaching that in school today, honey. Tell me what you've learned.
Yeah.
And start having these, but prepare yourself first. Go on certain websites that have this information. We just put out another blog that basically lists the signs of a child who might be being trafficked.
And Cherie, we'll link to that I'll put the link for that article below this live when we're done today.
Perfect. Thank you. Because that's where you start. Just start small, get tidbits, and then feel more confident in what you know, so that you can share age appropriately with your children. So when we teach kids, just so you know, K-5, we're not talking about trafficking. We don't use the word trafficking. We don't use the word abuse. We don't use the word grooming, etc. Those are for adults and older kids. But we certainly can teach kids about their personal safety and empowering them, that if they feel uncomfortable at something, or something happened online or in person, that they can come to you to talk to you.
Yeah.
You just have to be prepared to listen.
That's right. And one of the things I always emphasize for parents is the importance of keeping those lines of communication open, and the way that we do that. And I know we're going to talk more about this in March in anticipation of Child Sexual Abuse Month in April, but we are, or I should say Prevention Month. I should add the prevention in there.
Yeah.
I think it's just so important to recognize that when we're talking to our kids now, that we are giving them those tools, and that we're making sure that, and I have to confess, I lost my train of thought slightly, but that we're giving them those tools and that information, so that the lines of communication are wide open, so that when something does happen, they know that we are going to be a receptive party, and that they can come to us, and we're not going to freak out or get angry or lose it with them. And instead, we're going to help them solve the problem.
Right. And I feel so strongly that we tend to assume that our kids know that we're there for them.
Yeah.
And we need to send this message loud and clear, early and often. Hey, honey, just know, anything comes up that's, scary, that you feel afraid to tell, that's exactly the kind of thing I want you to come to me with. I will listen. Yeah. We'll deal with it together. And you have to say it often, because kids don't know, because they don't want to disappoint us. They're embarrassed to tell us all the things that will keep them from telling us. But we need to counteract that mindset in them, so they really know. And then when they really do come with us with some small things, like I failed a math test, we can't overreact at that stuff, because then they won't come to us with the big things.
Right. That's
And I
right.
think that's an important tool across the board of trafficking, across the board of teaching personal safety. Just knowing that you've left that door open is key. And I also suggest that you find every day 10 minutes, that's it, 10 minutes, that your kid knows that's their time with you. They can get your attention anytime, but they know at least they have 10 minutes, especially in a big family, that that you're available.
I love that idea. That's some of the comments that you just made have springboarded me or my brain into this other piece of information that I want to make sure that parents that are listening today get, which is, that idea that I think we assume oftentimes as parents that our kids know that we are there for them. We also assume, we make a lot of assumptions about what our children will understand online to be acceptable and unacceptable behavior, and that they would let us know if something, hinky was happening online. And I cannot tell you how many times I get calls or emails from parents who are, discovering that their child has been viewing adult content, pornography, right, on the internet, which is a stepping stone into sort of desensitizing these kids and making them more vulnerable to predatory behavior. It was just a couple of weeks ago, I got a text message from a friend's parent. It's from one of my daughter's friends' parents saying, this man reached out to my daughter online, and, fortunately in this case, the daughter, did report it to her mom, but so often these kids don't. And so what I want to emphasize about that is that, the internet is big, and there are a lot of awesome things about it, and there's a lot of really scary things about it. And we need to be the partners with our kids as they're learning to use that safely. And by partner, obviously lots of conversations are important, but I cannot emphasize enough the importance, particularly with, let's say K through 8, and, to a lessening degree beyond that, of monitoring, which means us checking, what are they doing? What sites are they going to? What text messages are they sending? Who are they communicating with? What games are they playing? Being aware. And then also having monitoring software, if, you can download, and there's some really wonderful programs out there, and using the parental controls. Like, we need to be the first line of defense on all of that stuff and not count on luck.
Right.
Right?
And I know that as parents, and I've spoken to many parents, it's exactly what we talk about. So many of them have said, like they're way more savvy with all this online stuff than I am. They're going to do a workaround, etc.
Yeah.
So part of it is building that relationship from day one, that using technology is it's a privilege, it's not a right. And that my job as your parent is to help you learn the rules of the road. So I wouldn't put you in a car and tell you to drive without you having gone through a lot of pieces and a lot of exams to make sure you know the rules of the road, and that you've had practice. So think of using technology and teaching your children how to use technology, the rules of the road, in the same way. And over time, teach your children, and there's plenty of resources online for this, teach your children about the rules of safety. In KidSafe, we have very specific rules that we teach elementary age kids, and we teach their parents as well. And the idea that it's your job to support them, to supervise them, to guide them, to have them use you as a person to bounce things off of. Mom, this happened. Dad, this happened. What do you think? Is this an okay website, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then to come to you with anything that just seems out of whack, and teaching them, well, what does out of whack mean?
Yeah.
And because they don't know, and God bless them, they shouldn't. I really am a believer, though, that we don't teach through fear. Once again, we don't say, oh my God, in the store when your child got lost, someone could have taken you, and you're shaking them, and they could have, hurt you, and that's teaching out of our own fear.
Right.
This is more teach that, yes, if you drive poorly, you might get into a car accident.
Right.
That's all you need to say. If you make poor decisions, you might get into trouble. If you do get into trouble, you come to me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the kind of conversations that help prevent trafficking, prevent, you know, your child being exploited and groomed online.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to wrap up with two final points. And that is, you know, oftentimes parents, because we either out of fear, we kind of, when we get afraid, we have a tendency to either get really anxious or we have a tendency to kind of bury our heads in the sand. And I understand that desire to kind of just pretend that this doesn't exist, but to kind of drive home, like the number of reports that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children get every year of online, like predatory behavior is in the hundreds of thousands, right? This is real. Bark, which is one of the online monitoring softwares that you can get, did an experiment with a woman who was 37 years old, but they made her look like she was 11, and she set up a profile online. And within about 2 hours, I think she'd been contacted by over 50 men. So it does happen. It does exist. And that's why it's so important that this kind of education that you and I are both talking about. The final thing, because I know we're hitting that 10 o'clock hour West Coast time, and that, what is it, 1 o'clock hour?
It's 1 o'clock hour.
Yep. Is I wanted to mention that if, you know, parents are looking for resources, obviously Savvy Parents Save Kids is a great resource. KidSafe Foundation is a great resource, but also the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is one of our partners inside the National Coalition for the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse, does have a phenomenal cyber tip line. And all you have to do is go to their website, which is ncmec.org, and I'll drop that link down below as well. And they not only have a plethora of information on their website, but they've got that tip line. So if you know of something that has happened or you need help managing a situation, that is your go-to resource. There is also a national trafficking hotline that you can call for assistance specifically with this trafficking issue. And both of those are really great resources for parents to just know that they're there in case they need them.
Yeah, I suggest we put some of these things into our phones.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You're out at a rest stop, you see something uncomfortable, certain, you have the number.
Yeah. Make a call. Make a call.
Well,
that's, you know, like I said, we're only going to go for about 30 minutes. So that kind of wraps up our time today. But Cherie, I'm grateful that you and I met and are going to be able to do this collaboration over the year. For those of you
this was fun.
It was
I
fun.
loved it. It was fun.
Talking about, you know, difficult subjects, as we said, doesn't always need to be awful. And we're, you know, Cherie and I are going to be coming on every other month throughout 2022 to talk about a different topic related to child safety. Our next event will be at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, March 10th. I think Correct. I have that date right.
Yes.
And we'll be using that kind of as a kickoff because April is Child Sexual Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. And we're going to be sharing some information with parents to kind of kick off that month and help you feel like you have the building blocks for some of what we were talking about today.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So Cherie, thank you so very much. Thank you to everyone who joined us live and everyone that is going to be watching this back later. We hope that this was helpful. If it was, if you have comments or feedback, please drop them down below. We would love to hear your thoughts, or if there are some specific topics that you would like us to touch on over the course of the year, let us know that as well. So thank you, and everyone have a fantastic
Thanks, everybody.
day.
Bye.
All right, I got to figure out how to get us turned off here. All right, I think we're good. Thank you.